we have a question here from the audience member, as I mentioned, how to model, reference, or master data in Data Vault with WhereScape. So just a quick introduction into reference data in Data Vault 2.0. Data Vault 2.0 defines reference data as a descriptive information to enhance a certain business context. So typically, this is a data object in the source systems that would offer code to description mapping for lookup purposes. And in such data objects or table, you would have a certain key or a code as the primary key, and we call this the reference key. These keys do not represent any business objects in the modeling term, right? So they are not a business keys. For example, ISO codes for country, they can be used to enhance or add additional information, such as official country name, the continent name, or the currency in this country. However, countries to most businesses are not really representing any business objects, unless you are, for example, the EU Parliament. Country information may enhance, however, marketing data sets where a marketing campaign has launched. But outside of this context, country information doesn't have any business meaning or, a direct business meaning, right? A property of reference data in Data Vault 2.0 is that it may change over time. So countries can change their official name or the official currency. It all has happened in the past. Certainly, Data Vault should be able to deal with this. The recommended standard to deal with reference data is by using so-called reference table. This is the, say, recommended standards, the traditional standard as well. If you have read the Data Vault 2.0 book, Building a Scalable Data Warehouse with Data Vault 2.0 by Dan and Michael, you will find references to these reference table or code mappings, right? There are some, let's say, more modern approach, that is to model a reference hub and a reference satellites. Now, earlier in the book, the reference hub is not really viewed as, a separate thing. In any case, a reference table should contain, the list or a list of reference codes or keys. In this, in the example earlier, that would be a list of ISO country codes, right? It does not contain a hash key, and the reference table, in the traditional sense, they may also contain a payload with additional attributes that do not change over time. Now, why I mentioned reference hub is that you might find, resources online, and even also blog articles that were published by us, by Scarefree, that would discuss about this concept of reference hub. And it's share a lot of properties with a standard hub that would be a list of business keys. Although in a standard hub, you would have a hash key. However, in a reference hub, you would not have any additional attributes. So that there's no payload outside of the reference codes. The reason being, you would add the reference descriptive attributes to a satellite hanging off of this hub. And in the traditional design, the reference hub would only contain a payload of attributes that would change over time. You see, this perception, or this is almost like an assumption that descriptive attributes of reference data sets will not change over time. But in fact, we see in many projects, even when it was stated that the reference data is rarely changed, or is never changed, even they do change. So why the hassle, right? So what we could do is we just open up, this reference or design these reference objects so that they can pick up changes over time regardless. So that is the preferred, or let's say like the more modern approach to model reference objects. That is with a reference table or so-called a reference hub, however you want to call it. And then hanging off of that, you would have a reference headlights that would have the a payload of descriptive attributes. Now, you will see that later on when we talk about doing exactly this or model reference data in WhereScape, you will see that they also follow a very similar approach to this reference hub and satellites. However, and this is something that we've been discussing a lot in projects and also in our trainings. We do learn that the reference hub only makes sense to model a reference hub if you have multiple sources for the reference data sets. So if there are, for example, different sources that would provide additional information to the ISO country codes, then you might think about modeling that reference hub, or it might make sense to model that reference hub, because only then you would have different information coming from different sources to describe that list of ISO country codes, right? Otherwise, and this is most of the cases, reference data set is only from one source. It's rare that you would have different sources that would describe the same, reference data context. In that case, we do recommend to skip the reference hub, or at least that would be my personal recommendation for you, because you should have everything you would need in the reference satellites, because we don't hash the reference codes. So the reference codes, or the combination of keys that would contribute the primary key in the source table, are readily available in the satellites, and you'll have the payload in the same satellite as well. So yeah, you can also get away without a reference hub in that case, right? And that is certainly, my recommendation or my preferred way to model reference data in Data Vault 2.0, but also in WhereScape. And we will take a look at a little demo on how to do exactly so in WhereScape, right? And what you're looking at is a source model from the test data set provided by Snowflake, the data warehouse or the database platform, TPCH. If you haven't heard of this, just look it up. It's basically a very simplistic data sets, test data sets that you can play around with when you start with Snowflake. And this data set describes, a small business, small business with customers making orders to the business, and you would have, in one order, you would have different line items provided by a certain supplier and different parts, right? Or coming from different parts. In other data scenarios, it could be products, right? And we are looking at this little corner here. That is, in customer, you have a key to the country, or in this case, it's called nation key. That is further described in this source table called nation. You would have a name to that country. And funnily enough, in this table, you would also have a foreign key, the region key to this table region, and there's a name and there's a comment here. So we'd like to use this little corner, these three objects here, to demonstrate how to model reference data in Data Vault and in WhereScape. because there's this funny interaction here, right? You have the key of nation is actually, first of all, the nation key, but there's also a region key in this table, and it's will be resolved into the region name by joining this table into the mix. So how do we model this? So at the end of the day, you will start with a datable design, right? And in here, we already started, in previous sessions, modeling hub links and satellites. Yeah, and right now we are looking at the nation and region corner. So what we will have here is, in the customer logical objects in the design, you would just tag the nation key just as normal as descriptive attributes. However you want to split your satellites, right? We would like to split it into a low volatility and PII satellites. And this key will be pointed to another logical object, and this is the logical object for later on, the reference tables that is to nation from this source. And in nation, you would have to tag, the nation key as the reference attributes or the reference key. And then the rest of them are, history attributes. This is the original, or let's say out of the box settings of WhereScape for the attribute types. Now, if you follow the standards of Data Vault 2.0 closely, you might also be able to change these attribute types. So simply change them to reference key or reference code, however you want to call it. And then this is just reference history attributes or attributes. And out of this, the model conversions, what they would then do is it would generate a reference table or a reference hub out of this nation key attribute here, and then a satellite hanging off of it with these attributes. Now you see, we haven't talked about anything called reference link because there's no such thing, right? A link relationship, among reference tables can simply be modeled, as part of the payload. In this case, the payload of the reference satellites of nation. And when you want to resolve this region key into name and comment, you would just have to join the reference satellites of region into the mix. Right, that's it. You might have cases when basically the foreign key is also part of the primary key definition of this reference table. In that case, just tag region key, for example, here as the reference key. Yeah, and out of that, a reference hub will be generated with nation key and region key, and then the satellite with name and comment. However you want to do it. In this case, this is, I think, the most efficient way to do it. And then you have the region, same thing, region key tagged as reference attributes, and then the rest as history attributes for the payload. Out of that, you will be, when you run the model conversions, this is also done with the out-of-the-box logics. You would have a so-called reference table. Yeah. Or, in modern term, we called it now the reference hub, with only the nation key, a record source, and the load date. So there's no hash key here, right? And then in the satellites of the type satellites, you would have the nation key, region key, and then you would have the name and comment, right? So like so. And then the hash diff, of course, is gonna be used to perform delta detection. So to determine if there has been changes or there has been delta happening to a key, nation key in this case, right? All right. And then the same thing goes for, the region reference table or hub and the satellite hanging off of it. All right. And that's it. That's how you would model reference data in 3D or in WhereScape in general. So when you when you deploy this to Rec, it will be loaded as part of your data model, your data vault model. I'd like to thank you for your attention. And if you have any further questions about this topic, feel free to send them to events@scalefree.com. I'll hope to see you soon in the next sessions. Have a nice day. Take care.